They would announce speeches days in advance, and you had to put that on your schedule. And Athens was announced in advance, and of course it thrilled me because I'd be going back to my alma mater, and I'd be going, a journalism student, I'd be going back as a White House correspondent, you know, with all the trimmings that has to it, hoping to impress all my friends, but then when I came back here, it was 12 years later, so none of my friends were still here, so there was no one for me to impress. But when the White House Travel Office and the president discovered that I was from Ohio University, the press corps was much smaller then. We were not 50 or 100. Well, we were about 50, but it was not 100, 200 who came in one day and were White House correspondents, and the next day they weren't. We were people who covered the White House. We were called what they called regulars. Regulars, we had regular seats on press plane. We had regular rotations on Air Force One. And so the president knew who we were. He would see me every fourth trip that he took. I would be on the airplane with him. I rotated on Air Force One every fourth trip or every fourth segment of a trip. So he knew who I was. And I think somebody on the staff said to him, or someone like him, you know that Sid Davis is a graduate of Ohio University, and John, put him on the airplane. And that became kind of a thing that the White House did. If the president was going to your hometown, they would find a reporter who was from that town. So when the Air Force One arrived and the hatch opened, he'd be standing in the doorway, and all the townspeople would see their hometown boy on the airplane. And that was something of what this was. I wasn't chosen to fly into Athens because necessarily I was brilliant or an expert on poverty. I was flown in here because I was a graduate of Ohio University, and they thought it would be nice to have that touch. Well, to me, flying into Athens from Columbus, we landed with Air Force One in Athens, and we choppered over here in the president's helicopter group to the ball field. And flying over the hills of Athens, and I remember them well because I used to go up to those hills a lot with a can of beer or a case of beer with several other people. And so I was familiar with some of it, but flying over the dogwoods were in full bloom. I remember the pastels of the green shades of the mountains. There was a pale green here and a dark green here, and it just blended in. It was so beautiful flying into town. Little did I know the impact that speech was going to have. You get the advance text before you get here. They give you a text. And little did I know how much impact it was going to have. When I read it, I probably said to myself, who's going to be interested in this? How do you drive people to read this thing and feel sorry for people down in Athens, Ohio, coal miners, where the mines have been burning for years? Who cares? Is he going to be able to move this thing? And he did move it. He came down here because he believed it with every sinew in his body, that poor people deserved a chance not only to have a good life, an education for their kids, but to be able to vote. And people of color had a right to the same privileges that the white people had. He came here, and then he went to the University of Michigan about a week or so later, and he did the same speech, except the first one was done here, and he actually used the word Great Society. And he was a remarkable man, and he moved it through the Congress. In 1964, he started getting some of the fruits of it. He was getting legislation almost every day. When we covered the White House in that first year or two period, he was so proud of what was happening in Congress, where they were passing his legislation hand over fist. It was almost like they couldn't wait to pass it. I mean, and it meant billions of dollars in expenditures and more taxes. But they were doing it. And that would not happen today, not at that pace. Try to get something through like that today, and it's going to sit there for years and years, and it'll rot in the House or Senate. And he was able to move people with his speeches. The people who discredited the war on poverty and were against it will tell you it failed. If you hear the Republican line, and war on poverty just failed, well, that's not true. There are millions of Americans today who have educations, are in better health, have jobs because of Lyndon Johnson and the war on poverty. There's no mistake about it. The statistics show it. Are we doing as much today as we did then? No. I don't think we have a person that can run for president who could convince the American people in the country's present mood with the stymied programs on the Hill between the Democrats and Republicans. I don't think you get anything through of a social welfare nature today. He was a salesman, and he sold the idea that as Americans, you can't allow these people that are suffering so much, and they still do in the year of 2014. Right around here, there are people in terrible shape. You can't allow these people to just disappear and waste away. Their children have to be a part of America. We have to do something for them.